although the conference has been about very practical carrier billing, mobile services, payments, regulation, networking for business, so I was asked to do the other end of it, which is what people might be doing in the next couple of years in the in the mobile Fixedline market. So I'm here with two hats on. I'm currently the BBC's Head of Interactive Technology, and that's for public service, world service, global news and worldwide, which is the commercial arm. As you may have guessed, or I've probably told you, I am leaving the BBC after doing a start-up for them, which is why I'm not going to get fired for wearing this, because they can't fire me. But I'm also here because I've been in the telemedia market for 25 years, so I was asked to combine the experience of the two.
Ever since you were a little kitten?
Okay, so at BBC we always think of people, we work with behavioural scientists and we work with marketeers, and if it's for non-children services, we have 4 people in our minds. One of them is our 18-year-old student, and for us that person uses a smartphone all the time, and they're usually on WhatsApp, that's their biggest thing at the moment, and within 10 minutes of waking up, that person is on their phone and communicating with their friends. So we know that that's what they're doing. We also know that they watch at least half an hour every single day of the week of short form video and clips. So where we come from is know your audience, don't try and just kind of give one thing to everybody. Then we've got a 30-year-old full-time worker who commutes to work and lives with their partner, and we find that they're pretty much on tablet devices. And if they're male, they tend to browse news and sport, and if they're female, they are looking at entertainment and retail. And we've got our 45-year-old working mum, and she works full-time and is married with 2 kids, and she gets home, sits in front of the telly and watches it on autopilot, so she'll watch whatever is served up. And interestingly, from the behaviours, so the way we do it is we've built real houses, real flats, real apartments, and we put members of the public in, and we sit behind, a bit like the police, and we watch them through two-way glass and film them. And interestingly with that is the behaviour dynamics. If the kids are in the room, they choose the telly. As long as it's appropriate, mum will let them watch it. If an adult is in the room, the female always takes the upper hand and argues over what to watch. And the partner, whether it's male or female, if they're in a partnership, then has to make an appointment to view.
You didn't have to build a house to find that out.
I know, but we've proven it. So they'll want to watch the football final, they'll want to watch the final of X Factor and female. So interesting stuff, but there's loads of data behind this, so I'm not going to go through all of it. So that's the background, and our 12th person is a 65-year-old retired guy, and he has the interest and the means to pretty much have every gadget going. So, for example, he'll have an e-reader device, but in reality he won't tell his friends he reads paperback books. And not to depress you about your future sex lives, but we know that the over 55s, 2/3 of them, the last thing they do before they go to sleep is read their books. So we know our audiences, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So some good news kind of for the guys at this conference. For us in linear television, in 3 years we've seen a decline of 12% in people watching telly. We've also seen, everyone thinks people record it in time shift, they don't, that's plateaued as well. But kind of overall media consumption has actually gone up by 20%. So people are watching in different ways, which is good news for a market like this. Pretty much on-demand content over the internet, that's what we're seeing. So we've got our 11 to 24-year-olds are watching YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook video. They're never ever going to watch TV again like previous generations before. But what we found with every single age group is they pretty much spend the same amount of time every day as each other building in time to watch digital content. So it is a market that is here to stay. Reason being, ubiquitous broadband internet, affordable, desirable smartphones. That seems to be the 2 triggers. People up to the age of 35, they wake up and they have their phones in their hands within 8 minutes of waking up, and they tend not to stop looking at them for the rest of the day, but they're with them right through till bedtime. So our target market is the up to 35s, that's what we're going for if we really want to get people kind of involved in stuff. We found with 16 to 24-year-olds, they actually go on record saying that they can't live without their phones. And interestingly, they completely change their behaviour and are willing to get into trouble. So if they need to recharge their phones and they've forgotten their charger, they will stop what they're doing and go and find a charger. If they have left their phone at home or lose it, they will do anything to quickly get that phone back. So we found people that skip school, skip college, skip jobs just to go and get their phone back in their hands, which I think is good news for a market like this because the phones aren't going away. 92% of people under 44 have a smartphone. Over 55s, as we said, have absolutely everything, but they do watch telly. And interestingly, they watch and look at Facebook and things and have social media accounts, but they don't post and they don't kind of interact with it. And the younger ones, the under 20s, actually want people to work harder for them. They want people like you to work much harder for them, so they expect curated music, video, that kind of stuff. And our under 25s don't buy newspapers and magazines at all, we've found from the publishers, which is quite interesting. They might pick them up if they're on the tube, they might pick them up in someone's house, they don't actually go in and spend money on them. So that market has got to change as well. Some interesting findings, again, for this group is that every consumer, and they don't realise it, but they have a daily consumer spend. Pretty much every day of the week, every week of the year, they will spend money in some form of micropayments on services. So there is money out there. And interestingly, we always thought it was determined by income and by education. And it's not. It's completely dictated by age and by mood. So it depends what they want. So it comes down to giving up services that they kind of want and need. So then we start working with intuitive marketing, targeting, and all of the BBC services go to a team of behavioural scientists, and they do very simple things like they just change the words that we use on campaign, and the difference is phenomenal. So for example, if I went in and said, I'm going to do this service and it's cheap, the scientists will turn it round and they'll say, this service is great and it's affordable. And the difference of figures absolutely shoot up. Next bit I won't go into, but there's loads we can send you about different parts of the UK, Europe, and different parts around the world in terms of what people are doing. But some general learning is quite interesting. Inner city kids use social media and YouTube much more than suburban kids. And we know our gamers are European gamers are in Frankfurt and in Stockholm. So when you start to know where people are, you kind of get some really interesting heat maps about where to advertise and stuff. The top 100 YouTube channels, they pretty much go for music, children's, and gaming is huge. Linear TV goes for entertainment, and people like to be loyal to shows like soap operas and dramas and stuff like that. And there's absolutely no distinction, back to the spend, there's no distinction between somebody being employed and unemployed. They still spend the same amount of time interacting and they still spend the same amount of money. They just find it from different places. It's the one thing they are not going to give up, which is interesting. They will give up alcohol and chocolate before they give up their phones, sex and car. I remember that from a very interesting family that I met through the experiment and then re-met. Lots of ways of how people use mobiles and Fixedline. You guys know that much more than we do at the client end. Social media is massive for us, and the reason is I think on first kind of opening gambit, people go, oh, there's no money in social media. That's not how we use it. We use it because we prove that that is where the referrals come from to use other things. So understanding, certainly for us, understanding social media is absolutely massive. So when I do stuff like this, which isn't very often, I do take it quite seriously, despite being dressed as a cat meow. How many have I got to do? How many meows have I got to do?
You're at 3 so far.
So, knowing the audience, I went and did a couple of run-throughs with people about actually what they do, why they do it, what they would do in the future. So I went and met a friend of mine put me onto Uber. and I went and met the CEO of the other Uber kind of enterprise, and interestingly, their stuff comes down to, their research says that people on social media are really sceptical of artificial kind of brand campaigns, of an agency coming up with something and telling you what you should do. And they said people see straight through it. So Uber have never spent a penny on advertising. The whole thing is referral based, and they say that that gives them an authenticity. So I thought that was really interesting. And then I went, this journey took me off to see a really interesting, this sounds absolutely terrible, but young lad in his bedroom. And he is YouTube's biggest gamer. And when you hear the figures, it's absolutely phenomenal. This is one guy in the UK that just comes up with short form games and posts them himself on his YouTube. I had a very interesting chat with him when I got him out of his bedroom and down the club with his mum's permission to tell him how to monetize it, because the figures are crazy. He's got 35 million subscribers around the world to his YouTube games, and he's got 8.5 billion views. So to put it in perspective, the World Cup got 1 billion views, and this is one kid in his bedroom coming up with amazing games. Doesn't do a lot else. So he's very interesting. He's very, very interesting. So no surprise how people spend their time. This is international. It's email, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Skype, blogging, WhatsApp, Twitch, and YouTube, but a decline across the world in Instagram. In the UK, we're seeing with broadband, certainly Virgin and BT are turning out to be the big players, but they're turning out to be big players because they've actually invested in it. They've put their money where their mouth is. We're seeing smartphones, without doubt, continues to be the growth area. 4G and sport, the biggest genre within it. So then when you start to do a mixed portfolio, you've got a BT backed by EE and offering a sports package. They really know what they're doing, and they're starting to get the payback. Interestingly, recently, huge surge in figures for people signing up to Sky TV channels, which were in decline. And the whole reason is just to get them connected to Netflix, because it's was the way to do it. And as you guys all know, Netflix is pretty much based itself on doing the House of Cards franchise, all based on behaviour, kind of algorithms about what they went to the viewers to say, what can we serve up to you that you will actually stay with. Reminded me of, going back to my 25 years, I worked in Japan for an audio tech company, and it was post-Crazy Frog, and they were just seeing all their kind of revenues diving. And they basically got to the point where they were going to close the company down. And somebody had the idea of saying, if you look at the supply chain, you're waiting to see if a TV show will have interactivity in it that's monetized. Why don't you buy the TV studios? And then you control it all the way through the food chain. That's what happened. They're now one of the most successful companies, and they were able to sell their business on for a lot more money only 6 months later after they bought the studios, because they could guarantee the commissions coming through. So it's kind of switching how you think. So I am going to wrap this up. But what I would say is, for the work we did, so smartphones, obviously, you've kind of got Android. We're finding that preload stuff at manufacturer level is a constant business. It's the MNOs that are going to change the market in terms of how they merge, what they're allowed to do, what the regulation is. I know people like Rory Maguire have a lot more knowledge on that kind of stuff than I do, so I won't go into that. But we're finding that trailers, clips, short-form videos, user-generated content is what is going to be running through those mobile channels. And straight away, people used to say to me, oh, it's like, in the case of the BBC, it's sending in a picture of the weather. But all you've got to do is apply it to the adult market and think, when you know that it's a short-form video clip of a certain duration that is going to get you the eyeballs, you can start to kind of work to what the handsets can do. And we know that apps are more popular than websites. So my last bit was just to say a couple of things that might be of interest. I apologise, this is the 40-minute version, that might be of interest to this room. One thing I would say, with Ramona sat in front of me, is one of our biggest test markets is Canada. We get the best results from Canada. we do stuff in America and Canada, and in Canada our results they're much more quantifiable. Our focus groups are much better. It is one of our biggest test markets. So what are people going to be doing from our R&D guys? They reckon they're going to be doing augmented reality games. They're going to be doing geocaching, so location-based services. So be no surprise when you see me dressed as a cat. There's sometimes being in the job I am at the BBC where I want to disappear, so there's location-based services that can hide you. There's location-based services that can find you. Like the time I parked my car in the wrong place in front of a hotel and then it lifted on a crane and removed, and somebody sent me a photo and I was like, okay, that's where I left my car last night, at least I didn't drive. Yeah. Okay, Twitter for video, Periscope type services for kind of heart tapping and accessibility. Reskinning Tinder for totally different uses. We found with all our test groups that just the data and the usability of Tinder, people love the swipe thing. I went out with a friend of a friend one night who I wanted to learn how to really use Tinder, and he let me just use his account, and it was quite cruel. But I was sitting there going, yes, yes, no, yes, but great technology. So my last one I think is, did Jarvis stay? Hello. Not casted aspersions, Jarvis. But this one is for you, actually. I went and met the marketing team of Plymouth Argyle, who I will be taking you to see. And this is where we really think the future is. We looked very specifically, we did a huge piece of investment work around the use of VR codes. And Plymouth Argyle helped me work out what a normal person, not calling you normal, would do with a VR code downloaded on their phone. So we did a whole, we're going to the match day with the marketing team. And what they did was basically, you could get your ticket on your phone using your VR code. You could then go to the coffee station at the train station, get your ticket, get a coffee as a V perk, get to the stadium, redeem your football ticket. I'm not that up on football, so if I was going and trying to keep Jarvis company, I'd want to know about the 2 teams that were playing that day. You could serve me up content on my phone that would tell me about the stats and the best goals and the moments and a couple of players, so I could blag it for at least the first 2 pints and try and get away with it. When I'm in the stadium, I can pre-order my food, I can pre-order my drinks, much better than that because I'm lazy, as I can be told when it's ready. So I get out of my seat when it's ready and go and collect it, although I'm working on somebody bringing it to me. And then afterwards I can post my pictures on social media, but that's all done with downloading one monetized VR code on my smartphone, and I think that's the way that stuff is very much going to go. So some of our international stats: mobile financial services, last year 65 billion transactions went through mobile, worth 250 billion, 30% of it is coming through mobile and tablet on an ongoing basis. Global carrier billing market is currently cited at 5 billion. So I know sometimes you go to individual events and think, in my own business, things are tailed off. The market is absolutely thriving. PC, tablets, smartphones, absolutely huge in Europe and America. Mobile, very much, particularly for our European friends here, we're finding that for the next 2 years it's Poland, Germany and Spain are going to be the biggest European markets. And I think that is about it, except we're finding that specialist mobile payment solutions will have a place. And they're expected to thrive if they serve up what the market is looking for, but currently our retailers are lagging way behind, and it's them that's going to cause a kind of blockage in the chain. For Fixedline, we're finding that people still want to talk to people for certain business-to-business deals, conference calls and stuff like that. People like sharing real good news over the phone. They still like Fixedline for that. If you're donating, thank you all for children in need, meow, then people actually like the feel-good factor of telling a call centre agent they're giving that money, but also hearing it back that that money is going to the right place. And also if people have got important appointments, they tend to use Fixedline to do that person to personal, person to business. as well. And my last bit, and I will say this, that Rory's not here, is he? I think Rory's gone.
Gone.
Okay, please don't tell him this. But I, bizarrely through the BBC, is I work with the UK government and I work in Brussels on what European policy and regulation might look like. But I can't tell him or he'll make me write essays. They're very much going for modern, flexible, light touch regulation in the future. I know that's not what we've got now. But interestingly, in all of those policy kind of think tanks, there's only one area where they agree that they won't be light touch, and that's where it comes to protecting minors. Everything else, there's been a sea change, but I honestly believe that if you are an adult, or you can kind of prove you're an adult, that in theory the future is about choosing what you want and also self-regulating. So I hope that wasn't too boring.